Hi there, I'm Andy in Brisbane, Australia, and welcome to Accidental True Crime. Today we're going to talk about Noah Presgrove. Why Accidental True Crime? Because I made my first video on an absolute whim testing out a microphone, and I talked about Micah Miller. And I had thousands of views, and now I've got a couple of hundred subscribers, and I've been thinking about what to talk about next, and Noah Presgrove's that. If you'd like to see more, just subscribe. I don't have a Patreon or anything. I'm trying to work out how I'm even going to do this. But Noah Presgrove, let's get a few things out in the open. I'd like to have a channel that makes just concise, thoughtful points on videos that aren't very long, and I'm trying to add something to the narrative. So here goes. If you have a multiple day party and there's underage drinking, nothing good can come of that. And that's part of the problem here in this case, is that everyone's messy, or a lot of people in this case are messy. If you're an adult and you facilitate a multi-day party with underage drinking, you've got some answering to do, because a young man has died, and that is a tragedy. And whether it's an accident or something more nefarious has happened, the fact is that it's just an utter tragedy. And, you just can't help but have a lot of empathy for this young man's family and the people that are closest to him. So, obviously, there's been a bit of a cone of silence with people that have been at this party. And I think you can see this in a school classroom when someone's got to give someone up, but everyone will take detention instead. And this is what this seems to be like. And someone's going to break their silence one day, and we're really going to figure this out. But obviously, in the early hours of the morning, Noah was in an ATV accident of some sort. Maybe a rollover. There seemed to be some other people there. And the fact is that he may have been seriously injured during this accident. And he was obviously probably still alive, and there's some reports that some people help him shower. It could have been seriously concussed, and he could have had serious internal injuries. And it may be part of what's led to him being found dead on the side of the highway, deceased on the side of the highway a little further down the road. There's some reports of an altercation. There's some Snapchats. Obviously, everyone's been drinking. But, in Australia, we have rugby league, football, where there's no helmets and no padding. And, you see people that get seriously concussed, and they're still up and walking around and probably making terrible decisions. And they're terribly injured. And if you've had an ATV accident, you could also have terrible internal injuries, fractures. And so maybe that's part of what's happened. Maybe he's made it back to the house okay, and someone's helped him get cleaned up, and there's reports that he wanted to go to bed, and some young lady didn't let him do that in her bed. That's, of course, totally fine. And maybe at that point, he was injured to the point where maybe someone tried to get him off the property, maybe in the back of a ute or a pickup truck. You call it in America, ute in Australia. And, it could be that he was being taken off the property, and in an injured and concussed state, he's tried to climb out of that ute while it's been moving and ended up, fatally injured. And then, of course, there'd be some sort of cover-up at that point. Maybe after the accident and after he's been cleaned up, he's got into some sort of altercation with someone at the party. He's already terribly injured, and, he's ended up fatally injured at that point, and then the cover-up begins. Maybe he was concussed and he walked off the property himself and down the highway. The coroner's report shows that he probably wasn't hit by a truck or a vehicle moving at 65 miles an hour. But there's one thing that hasn't been mentioned that might account for some of his injuries. Not all of them, because obviously I think some of the injuries were sustained in the ATV accident. But what if he left the property under his own steam or with some help from someone else? He's terribly injured, but conscious and walking. And he makes his way down the highway, and he's hit by the side mirror of a truck or a van or a large pickup truck that's moving past it, neck and head height. it would actually explain the fractures on the back of his head, his neck fracture, the terrible injuries to the top of his head. It possibly wouldn't leave debris. And especially if he's already carrying other internal injuries from an ATV accident, really could have been the final straw on what was a terrible and tragic evening. And maybe that's how he's ended up on the side of the highway. A terrible accident after another terrible accident. That's one possibility that fits his injuries that I've heard no one say. A side mirror moving past at 65 miles an hour. In Australia, that's somewhere around 110 k's an hour. It's awfully fast if you stand on the side of the highway and watch cars go past at that speed. Imagine getting hit by a mirror at the back of the head at that speed, or on top of the head at that speed. It'd be catastrophic. But you wouldn't have all the injuries from being hit by a car. And this just is a possibility of what's happened. Obviously, there's more information to come here, and someone at the party has to speak up. And it's really, frankly, it's up to the adults. It's up to the adults of that party to speak up, because people are withholding evidence, their phones, and deleting media, and there's a bit of a cone of silence around it, and that has to stop. That has to stop so we can solve this case, because it might be a terrible accident, or there may have been a crime, but what has happened is a tragedy. So I hope we can all find out what happens to Noah Prescott one day soon. And yeah, I guess my key questions are: how injured was he in the ATV accident? How did he leave the property? He could have been hit by a side mirror of a truck or a van or a large pickup truck. It's moving past at high speed as he makes his way down the highway, concussed and quite injured. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking a second to watch. I'm Andy, and cheers. I hope you're all going well. Ta.